We're at the Black River and Western. It's a short line and tourist railroad in Ringoes, New Jersey. And it was originally the Pennsylvania Railroad's line to Flemington. And the track came off their Belldell main line down in Lambertville. And from Lambertville it ran on up to Flemington, handling local freight, but its biggest freight, or its biggest product, was milk.
The cold kept us from working hard because it's good coal, hot coal. It came from Ed O'Brien, who owns the Coal and Fuel Company in Gallitzin, PA. He owns Wicklow Fuel in Gallitzin. And Ed got this coal for us, special order. And it's really good stuff.
Does it have like more anthracite in it? It's harder, or
it's just hotter.
Hotter.
It has less slate, less gravel, less dirt. It's more burnable coal than most brokers will provide. You tell Ed what you want for coal, he'll get it for you. And he's not going to charge you an arm and a leg along the way. He'll find it, he'll charge you reasonable fees, and he'll get it to you.
In 1966, I moved to Trenton from Eastern Kentucky, where I'd been working on education programs for unemployed coal miners. And it was on that job, working for the Department of Economic Opportunity and later the State Department of Labor, that I learned about this steam train operation. Out in the woods, there was this steam engine that ran, and it ran on weekends.
You hear this whining?
Yeah.
That's the dynamo. That's the thing that's making the electricity that runs the lights.
And I checked it out. I loved what I saw, these old wooden cars, this steam engine. How can I get associated with the railroad? I walked up to the conductor in Flemington, asked John Bishop, how do you get involved here? And he told me that you start off like you do on any of the volunteer short lines. You work around the station, you clean the bathrooms, you help paint cars, and you do all kinds of interesting labor related things.
Just trying to make it look pretty for tomorrow. Everybody's going to see it, so it's going to be running. The public will be here, so we want it to look good. It's a good machine. Got to make it look good. It's going to look as good as it's going to run.
And then if you apply yourself, you'll get to be put on the train. You'll punch tickets. And then later on, you get on the ground, you work as a brakeman. And then if you want to work on the engine, then you can start firing. And after that, after a few years, eventually you could be running the engine. Well, all this sounded wonderful to me. I thought, well, gee whiz, I ought to start coming out here often. This was toward the end of their season. This was along about almost Labor Day of 1966. And so I told John that I would get involved. I'd see him next weekend, and I'd start working as a Black River volunteer. I said, I really like trains, and I had worked for the Western Maryland Railroad for about 5 years as a brakeman. And John's facial expression changed a bit, and he said, oh, you worked as a brakeman. And I said, yeah, I did. And John smiled and said, we need a brakeman next weekend. Can you be here on Saturday and work as brakeman on the Saturday job? And I was very happy. I said, sure. So I was riding on the engine in less than a month after I had first inquired about the railroad. And when you rode on the engine, the fireman usually let you fire a bit. He showed you how to do it. Here's what you do, here's what you don't do.
All right, there's train order number 1, authorizing 60, 2 round trip to 3 bridges. Leaving here at 10:45 at 2 p.m.
And within about, I don't know, I guess maybe 6 weeks, I was working regularly as a brakeman and learning a lot as an apprentice fireman. And it turned out that that year, Ross Rowland ran the first of his high iron steam trips. And a lot of people at Black River were going to be volunteers. And guess what? The steam engine had no firemen that weekend. Everybody left to be involved with high iron's first steam excursion. And there were no firemen available. So I fired for Lloyd Arkansas, very patient man. If you couldn't learn to fire with Lloyd, you just never could learn to fire.
Tell us how you got to be an engineer.
Well, that came several years later. You don't get to be an engineer you get to be an engineer when they need engineers. You get to be a fireman when they need firemen. There were plenty of engineers around, and I was very happy to be a fireman. And most engineers will always let you run at least one trip after you've been firing for a number of months, or maybe in some cases, some places, maybe a year or so. The engineer will let you run a trip or two. So you get to run the train. In this instance, you get to run from Flemington all the way back to Ringo's. Whoopee, an 8-mile trip from Flemington to Ringo's, and you had control of the whole thing from Flemington to Ringo's, and stopping in the Ringo station, learning how to work the air, how to make the brakes work properly so you don't flop people on the floor with nasty, bad, hard stops. Make nice, smooth stops. And then take the train on out of the station. I was at Black River from 66 on into the late 60s when I went to graduate school in Boston, and there I got a job on the New Haven Railroad. And I got a pass, a New Haven Railroad pass, that would let me ride all the Penn Central trains in the east. So I would mark off at the New Haven and take the train down to Trenton and get a ride from Trenton out to Ringo's, and once at Ringo's I'd fire. I'd work at Ringo's for the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. That's how the assignment roster would have me for a whole weekend. I'd sleep at a motel or in one of the cabooses that we had there at Black River. Sunday night, I always managed to find somebody riding the train on Sunday afternoon who was going to be heading over toward Princeton. And I would get a ride with them from Ringo's to Princeton, and in Princeton at about 8 or 8:30 in the evening, the Atlantic Coastline train to New York City made a stop at Princeton Junction. So the railroad turns out to be one of my one of life's constants. While I moved from job to job and place to place, I always kind of went back to the railroad because I loved it. I loved being around the trains. I loved running the engine, working on the engine. The whole thing was just great. I wind up working for the State Department of Education, and instead of being in Trenton where I was before with the Department of Labor, I was stationed in Camden. But Camden was close enough to Ringo's, and every weekend that I had a chance, I was driving from Camden on up to Ringo's, working a regular assignment as a fireman. I'm 65 miles from Camden to Ringo's. Get there, be there with my friends, enjoy myself, spend a couple days there, and then back to Camden and back to work. It's interesting the way railroads promote firemen to engineers. It really depends on when they need engineers.